Hey guys. Hey everybody, looks like we're live. We're trying out the new functionality that's built into YouTube, and we're not using OBS software. This is like right out of the browser. And yeah, so we have no way to do transitions or any of the cool stuff we used to do when Omar was here. And so we're just straight up live streaming through their new, very simplistic live stream software. So enough of that tech talk. Let's do some other tech talk. And sitting here is the man himself, Chase, with Definitive Arms. And we thought it was an appropriate time to talk about AKs, kind of the state of the, wow. So there's one of the downsides of doing it right off your computer is Apple integrates everything from the watch to the phone to the laptop. And when I get a phone call, it'll ring, so you guys get to hear that. Anyway, so now's a great time to talk about kind of the state of the AK. Yeah. Marketplace, things have changed a lot from 5 years ago.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And then we will field some questions. We're going to ask you guys to do technical questions. We want to keep it kind of limited in scope. Don't ask Chase to critique his competitors because we won't take those questions. We're not here to, pick on anybody or to degrade anybody else. We're just here to talk about AKs and answer technical questions you guys may have. So anyway, let's kick it off with talking about the state of the AK union. Rob, hopefully you're watching, my friend. So what is the state of the AK Operators Union? Where are we at today, man? Things have changed since 5 years ago.
I mean, it's a really different market. I mean, you've seen like the evolution of like the AR has been real gradual. It's like AKs took this really sharp hit about 4 or 5 years ago. And I can remember when I got started, you couldn't even hardly find a 14mm suppressor. Yeah. Now almost everybody makes suppressors, makes them for AKs. There's a plethora of high-end offerings for them. And it's really catapulted into something that I never pictured, when I got my company started. And I mean, you even have guys now, 3-gun competing with, high-speed tactical AKs. And, even 5 years ago, that really wasn't a thing people were doing. So we have a lot more options on the market in some regards. Some have diminished, obviously like Vepr Sagas, certain rare parts kits are diminishing. But we have a lot more stateside production. Yeah. And we definitely have a lot more builders and people, in the game trying to put offerings on the market.
Yeah. So things, there was a time when I was a young pup when we couldn't get block guns outside of China. So when the Soviet Union was still around, we didn't get Russian guns. We didn't get Yugoslavian guns. We didn't get, any of that stuff that was behind the Iron Curtain. We did have access to Chinese firearms, but then that got cut off in the early 90s. We had the 89 ban done by a Republican, then we had the 94 ban done by a Democrat. And, it's just kind of gotten worse from there. They've imposed all these stupid restrictions. So now companies have to bring them in a neutered, state. So they'll come in with a single stack magazine, only capable of taking 10 rounds, and they have to be hogged out and opened up and a feed ramp installed to use a regular magazine, and new stocks need to be put on them. So it's like we got regulated to death.
Right.
From the 80s to present, we saw, kind of the golden era of firearms importation was pre-89. And then we've just been hit with all these import restrictions that everybody's trying to find workarounds to.
Well, you have ups and downs with it too. And it's like, a prime example is how many hands and people who are involved, as opposed to like you got an Norinco, it was made at the factory that was supposed to be making these components, and they came in, it was a whole gun, and you generally got, a consistent level of quality out of it. Then you take like the Sagas. The Sagas were imported by a dozen different companies. Some people offered conversions from the factory. Some people didn't. They were converted differently in different configurations. Some of the work was good. Some of the work was bad. So you have varying opinions of what the gun was, when the reality was that outside of Izmash, and there's so many people handling them, drilling and tapping trunnions, welding in, feed ramps, things like that. It's like they could be hit or miss on quality because of just how many pairs of hands had to touch them. So it was an inconsistent state on the product itself, which wasn't really, representative of what actually left Izmash. Just wasn't the same.
Do you remember back in the day, Robinson Armament, when they were still making their M96 expeditionary rifle? Do you remember when they brought in the Veprs for the first time? I believe they're the first company to bring in the Veprs, and they had that really weird furniture on it, and nobody knew what to make of the guns. And a lot of people didn't know. I remember I was just learning about AKs. I'm like, what is this thing? I didn't realize that was the actual RPK used by the Russian military just in a civilian sporting rifle format. I was like, what is this thing? And now I haven't seen one. I was at a pawn shop when we were traveling down, I think, to see Eric, Iraq veteran. and we hit a gun store, and they had one of the original imports from, and they wanted way too much money for it. Otherwise, I would have made it mine.
The interesting thing there is like that's like the import equivalent of like you see people with like a California and New York compliant AR, and it's got a Monte Carlo style stock, pistol grip, and it's like people like who don't know anything about guns, like, oh, that's not an AR-15. It's like it's an AR-15 all day, and it's like we had sporterized Sagas and Beppers coming in, and people don't know anything about AK. It's like, oh, that's not an AK because it didn't look like a classic AK. It didn't have a banana magazine coming out the bottom.
Banana clip.
These features, and it's like the reality is the core, the engine, the heart is exactly the same. And for guys like myself and other build shops, it's like that's all you wanted was that core basis of quality components. The metallurgy was good, the barrels were good, the general construction was good. They're decently straight, a little bit crude, they're mass assembled, but they're tough guns and they worked well. And we weren't getting them because we wanted them in the imported configuration. Basically, you're buying an assembled parts kit.
And here's what's really funny, guys. There was a time when I was younger, Chinese rifles were considered junk. Nobody wanted them because China could only produce junk in American eyes. And oh, by the way, guys, if you do a super chat, if that's enabled, Will's kind of watching for questions. Will, if you see something will pop up at the top of the bar, it says like $5 or $10. If somebody donates, make sure that we answer their question, just so you know what that is. So if somebody super chats it, we'll definitely answer that question. But yeah, so people used to think the Chinese guns were garbage, and now people pay a premium for a Chinese gun. I mean, I remember back in the 80s, I was stationed at a barracks in Washington State, and the Glenn's gun shop was just off base, and I used to go in there all the time. I remember when the Polytech Legend came in. I'd made a video with the rifle. It's been in a couple of videos, and they weren't popular back then because they're twice the price of a stamped receiver. And I knew what it was even then. I got my Polytech Legend, and people thought it was junk. And I think even then in the 80s, they were like $800, man. They were twice the price or more of a standard AK, which is like $250 or $300.
And even at a point, it's like, prior to the, investment grade transferable machine gun market coming about, it's like one of my original customers, like the first year I was in business, he had a, he had a Select Fire 5.56 Norinco AK that he wanted like a mag weld done on. And I'm like, it's like the rarity of having it. It's like, man, I could do the work because I really don't want to cut this thing up. And he was like, no, I'm never going to trade. I bought it dirt cheap, and he bought it dirt cheap years ago. And the reality of it is that gun was worth so much money. And I told him, I was like, look, man, I could improve the utility value of this thing while you're, behind the trigger. I was like, I probably am diminishing the collector value. Of transferable Norinco 5.56 AK.
Yeah. I just saw one of the questions go by, or a comment go by. Somebody right here says, it's hilarious how many people hate on the Chinese SKS rifle. But worship on the, here's something, it's funny. So I just happened to have one of the rifles. When I was a kid, these things were $89 or $90. You could get them for less than $100. $125 you're overpaying for it. And these are just, we call them Chicom SKSs. And they're, this one's all numbers matching, and I have several of them. I'll pick them up. I won't pay more than a couple $100 for them, but you can find them if you shop around. And, the guys back then considered these guns to be junk, and they're anything but junk. I mean, I remember all the preppers back in the 80s and early 90s. This is what preppers bought. Yeah. You remember that? Because if you're into the prepping scene back then, SKSs, people buy like 10 of them at a time because they were, like the ultimate prepper's gun, because you could, stockpile them, and the ammunition was always been dirt cheap, But so we've seen the AK market evolve, and so today, I remember having a conversation with Rob Ski. Oh, I guess maybe it was a year or so ago. He was up visiting you, and we were talking about how the kits are getting worse. Yeah. So, just a couple years ago, you could get a Polish kit with original barrel, unissued condition, beautiful, and today, and you would only pay a couple $100 for it. Mm-hmm. Today, you can get a Romanian kit that is horridly out of spec. You can pretty much pull the barrel out of the trunnion without a press, pitted with rust, horrible shape. You're going to pay $500 or something stupid for the kit. And people complain that like your kit builds get so expensive. Like I have one of Chase's East German builds, and this was built on a pristine. It was sanitized, so they took the serial numbers off, but it was
an unissued kit. Didn't even have a primer pocket mark on the face, and it was unfired. And you just those kind of kits are diminishing on the marketplace. You just can't find them anymore. Thank
you for the super chat, man. Cheers to you as well, my friend. But yeah, so this, I mean, this is absolutely beautiful. Of course, Chase's work is second to none, but these kits have become very, very hard to find. And that means the price of the kit goes up, which means the cost of the gun goes up. So people kind of get stuck in that rut of thinking AK should only be $300, $500. Now it's $600. But the reality is, if you want a quality AK like this one, you're going to have that much just in a kit these days.
Well, we're starting to hit that magic area too, where it's like guys who are building retro build ARs, not like, you know, the new retro line of like from Brownhouse's new production, but guys who like they got a specific variation of a Colt that they want. It's like, from a usability standpoint as a tool, you can certainly go out and buy a cheaper AR that's going to hit the mark and do what you need to do. But like, if you want that generation of parts and it built that way, I mean, that thing's going to cost 3-4 times as much as a utility equivalent gun that's on the market today. And, you know, unfortunately now with these kits no longer becoming a utility value, it's like the rarity of them and people collecting builds on odd kits. We're starting to get into that boutique collector market with those kit builds, you know, and it's just not at a point where you can go out and buy a kit for $100 anymore and put it together and sell it retail for $300-400. You're just not there.
And the sad thing is, and again, we're not going to attack or name other people, so don't ask who I'm talking about. But there are a lot of builders out there that are screwing up the most basic things. They don't know how to press rivets properly, and they you know, if they just don't know how to build an AK, and they're selling them for a premium. So you really don't know what you're getting. There's a lot of companies out there that made names for themselves that, you know, are just marginal builders at best. And if you went to them and said, hey, I want a barrel this long, I want you to shorten the receiver by an inch, that's work that you could actually do,
Right.
But a builder can't do that. A gunsmith can. And that's the difference between, and that drives us back into something else I wanted to touch upon. You know, when somebody comes to you and says, you know, I built my own AR-15. No, you didn't. You went and picked up a box of parts, you put them together. My 10-year-old son can build an AR-15. Right. Now, when somebody says they built an AK, I won't pull the trigger on it unless I know who that person is. When you build an AK, you truly build a rifle because there are certain things that have to be done and takes experience to know. I mean, you can buy the wrong rivets. You can just get online. You don't even know what you're shopping for, and you can get the wrong rivets. You don't get a quality receiver. You don't even know how to get the, you know, barrel properly pressed in and pinned, you know.
Well, you see too, like that's the beauty of the AK is that like, yeah, as a bare minimum, you have people beating them together in the garage with a mallet and a 2x4, and they're sanding components down to get them to go in because they don't have a press to put them in and then have a proper press setup. And the beauty of the system on a whole is you can put them together and you can get them running. They don't last very long generally you do that. I'd say, you know, in the first few years of our business, we took in a whole lot of local, you know, garage kit builds. Guys had guns that they're running fine, 300, 400, 500 rounds in, stuff just falling apart, things aren't going right, couldn't hit anything, you know, parts are shifting and seizing up, they can't get the gun apart. And, you know, to truly build it well is a different nature than just making it function at all. You know, at a minimum, an AK should go bang, a pretty crude setup. Is it accurate? Is it consistent? Is it going to be a 100,000 round gun? And, you know, like for us, you guys have to pull a kit out of the box, they throw the thing together rapidly, you know, they call it BFPU, scuff it up and send out the door, and really they're not refinishing, not doing anything to it. And the difference is like, you know, we'll take a kit, we tear every single component down, you know, we'll tumble polish, clean, we'll flash oxide every single part, you know, the spring inside of the trap door, the screws in the buttstock, you know, pad itself on the back, it's, you know, every single component's had all the scale removed and restored versus just how fast can we put it in a jig, assemble the front end, hammer the rivets on, and in 45 minutes it's out the door, or did you hand fit everything and put a dozen hours into the gun?
I've sent guns out to other builders that I used to think were pretty good and got kits back where they finished over rust. Mm. And now you see the finish starting to come off the gun. And I take very good care of my guns. I keep them in a controlled air conditioned environment, a dehumidified environment. And there's no reason for that gun to start having problems. It's because they didn't properly finish the gun. They you know, didn't strip it all the way down. They did everything wrong for expediency. Right. And I'm like, oh man. And so I basically wasted my money. I guess I could salvage the kit by cutting it up, but I wasted my money. And so it's really depressing because people don't understand the skill that is required to build an AK. A lot of people have the mindset, because I see it repeated on the internet over and over again. Well, the AK, everybody should be able to build one because they got people building them in caves in Afghanistan. Well, yeah, they do. I've also seen, you know, Thompson submachine guns knocked off by people in caves. So there's guys in the Philippines making 1911s by hand. Yeah, there's some skilled people out there. That doesn't mean they don't have skill. It takes a lot more skill to build an AK probably than any other gun on the market right now.
Well, and that's really like, I actually draw a parallel to that right now, that much like an AK is like a 1911 in that regard. Is you can get ones that are mass produced that are $300 or $400 to go bang. You have guys who will buy some that are $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000. And is that a great utility value? Some yes, some no. But you can look at them and you can see where they were one-to-one fitted. You can see where if you pull them apart, every piece was lovingly fitted and beautifully refinished. And like there's a value there for people who want it. And the AK is reaching that point where there's guys who are looking and they want every single piece of that gun touched, hand fitted, polished, tuned, refinished, restored. And it's different than just utility rack grade, slam it together and throw it out the door.
Yep.
And it's really weird to make that comparison of AKs to high-end 1911s, but we're starting to hit that point that based on the rarity of the parts, that's just where it's going to be at.
I just have to answer this because they did do a super chat. The Bren 2 for $1,400 is a good deal. Yes, it's a good deal. Let's and it's not an AK. So, and then there's another $10 super chat. Thank you guys for doing this. What about the Arsenal SGL 2294? Would you SBR this rifle or leave it stock, and or is it super rare? Well, Arsenal is still bringing in guns, and they do this marketing technique where they'll bring in a bunch of guns. They'll release a block of them and say, going away soon, limited numbers, and they'll put it out at, let's say, $8.99. Then 6 months later, suddenly more appear on the market. Now they're, instead of $8.99, they're $9.99, and we may never see them again, get them while they're hot. And then 6 months to a year later, another magic group that magically appears. Now they're $1,000 or $1,200, get them while they're gone. So there's this marketing scheme that they do at Arsenal. Are Arsenal AKs good investments? Yeah, they don't really lose their value because Arsenal will not bring the price down on their guns. No matter how depressed the market gets, if everybody else is reducing their price, Arsenal will actually increase.
Right.
They did one AK that they announced at SHOT Show, I think 2 years ago, that was the 879. Remember they did the one that was less than $1,000? They sold out that fast, you can't get them anymore. They
fixed stock 107.
Mm-hmm. I think it was a fixed stock 107. To answer your question, I mean, I personally wouldn't mess with any import AK right now because we take imports for granted. There's a time I put off buying Russian AKs. I'm like, now they're coming in, they're cheap, they'll always be available. I'm going to go buy something else. And now that they've been banned and we'll never see them again, I'm kicking myself because now instead of paying $399 for unconverted Sega, I'm going to pay $2,000 for one that's already converted in good shape. And it's just so imports, I say leave them alone because do it to a custom build or a US build or something. I leave my imports alone personally.
Yeah, I mean, outside of we get Sagas that have been gutted down to the action guys sent us, and obviously one tournament or at least a usable gun. But it's like I've got some older Rinkos and some older AKs that were imported as is. And years ago I broke them down with the intent of making them custom guns, but now I wouldn't do it. The value just you'll never get them in again. And I don't want to be that guy who cut them up. I have plenty of other guns I can cut up and turn into, high speed, tactical AKs. And
yep.
The reality is we're starting to see that. Mausers did this years ago, even before my time, where it's like they were almost gone to their day. People just bought them, did whatever, and they drilled and tapped them, put hunting scopes and whatever. And now it's like some of the ones people would cringe if you drilled and tapped them because they're worth so much money.
Dude, I remember the Mausers doing that. I remember, when Mausers were just being, you went to gunsmithing school. So what did they teach back then? They taught how to modify Mausers because they were $20.
Oh, yeah.
And you could buy them in crates so people would pull the barrels off because the Mauser action is extremely tough.
Yeah.
And so you can pretty much chamber it in any caliber as long as it fits in the ejection port.
And that was the mainstay of what they taught us. Everything was about sporterizing Mauser, turning into custom competition, precision, or hunting rifles for people. And it was really like the criteria is like almost old when I was there, and it was just coming out of that, it was an out-of-date trend. But yeah, to point, those things were everywhere. And now it's like nobody would ever think about pulling a barrel and swapping it and put, a new shilling barrel or whatever in them. They're too valuable.
Just get on Gunbroker and see what, an original World War II Mauser is worth. Oh my God, they have just gone from scrap guns to highly desirable. People would pay, good money for one that has pretty much 60% finish and still has patina and pitting on it.
Well, it's an operating system base. You have, cock on open, bolt actions, 700 Savages, are all around, and people are going to get those to shoot now. And we're going to have newer AKs that are produced domestically. People are going to buy to use up and beat up, and we're slowly transitioning to this point where the AKs that people used to beat up are going to get put away as safe queens.
I've already done it. I just want to answer Kenny's question here really fast. Thank you, Kenny, for the super chat. Does Chase plan on doing any Chinese Type 56s with the spike bayonet? And that's just lack of kits, man.
Yeah.
I'm sure he would if you could get one, but there's so many rules and regulations because China's been, their firearms have been banned from import. And so if you want to get a Chinese AK, like I just recently did it's sitting over there. They did James River Armory did a Type 56 where they got some pristine kits that they demilled and brought in. But what they had to prove is that they were in a neutral country for 5 years before they could even be brought in as kits. You don't understand how many rules and regulations that are applied now to imports, even of kits. And even if you do get a kit, ATF has now determined that the barrel is non-importable. I mean, it's just an asinine rule that they've made up with. It's not even a law. It's just their determination.
Right.
And so now you can't even get the barrel. And so somebody would have to have a whole bunch of those spikers sitting around somewhere in a neutral country, be able to prove they've been there for 5 years, and then somebody have to find them, demill them, import the parts kits, minus the barrel, minus all the parts that are no-nos. And so, I mean, it may happen at some point in the future, but I wouldn't hold my breath, guys.
The verbiage on it is something like, if the barrel was inside of a gun that was ever a machine gun with rounds put down at the barrel constitutes a machine gun part in of itself. And it's like, not attached to the gun, the barrel may be okay, but it's like all these weird areas where they start classifying otherwise parts that aren't regulated. You can normally order to your door that are produced here are now, regulated parts. And
it's just ridiculous. Yeah. ATF is completely out of control in that regard, which is one of the reasons why they're being sued right now. And I'm a plaintiff in that lawsuit. All right. Oh, here we go. Here's another super chat. Do you think scrolling here, see more quality but affordable 5.56 AK versions out there? There used to be there's a ton of quality ARs for $500, but do you think we'll ever see a quality US-made AK for $500 in 5 years? So that's a great question, man. And thank you for the super chat. For whatever reason, US companies have a very hard time making every single part of an AK and building a quality AK. And I'm going to ask you your opinion on this, but here's my thought on it. For a quality 5.56 USA made AK to come to market, it's going to take a lot of money, and it's going to take, because you have to tool up for it. Then you have American labor costs. In China and many of the former Soviet satellites, and other countries, labor is far less expensive than it is here. If you're going to source all the materials here, steel here, wood here, labor here, and the tooling here, the cost of the gun is going to be $1,500 or $2,000 if it's built right.
Right. They
forge those components. They, do everything. They get all the cuts, the bolt lugs just right. We know the secret sauce there. We're not going to share. There's so much stuff that most AK builders don't know, because we look at stuff that's produced by some companies, and you just take a look at the parts. It's like, geez, man, they don't even know how to get these cuts right.
The geometry is wrong, regardless of metallurgy or overall assembly craftsmanship. And there's another good parallel there. It's like if you took the Mosin Nagant, people expect them to be $100 guns, $200 guns, whatever in today's market. If you tooled up and produced the Mosin Nagant today, it would cost more than a Remington 700, but nobody would pay more for a Nagant than, an out-of-the-box, current production bolt action like the 700.
Jim, I just want to say, Jim just did $99 on the Super Chat. Brother, thank you so much. Jim wanted to say thanks to both of you for taking the time to do this. It's great content, and look forward to seeing more of it in the future. Keep up the good work. Jim, man, thank you so much, brother. That means a lot. And then while we're on the topic of Super Chats, any plans to retrofit VEPRs with magwell adapters? I have a 5.56 and a 308. They would like to get the adapter kit done, so I'll let you answer that question.
Well, we are currently short-staffed. We are processing them. We have a lot of them getting done. You probably see some of the magwell guns getting trickled out, the copper selling. We do have customer guns getting processed. We are training some new staff, and we are this close to launching a new site that will be able to take those services in. We still have a lot of magwell components left, and we will continue to do the conversions until we probably get through the amount of components we have. 'Cause the reality is tooling up and investing to make, another 1,000 sets of magwells is going to be tough when there's a limited supply of hosts. Saigas and Vepers are my preferred. And, it's outside of that. And then, you kind of entitled one of the other questions is we do have American, producers are going to be spitting out 5.56 AKs here soon. And the nature of what it takes to convert, a Russian gun to do this is going to be cost prohibitive with some of the options that are coming out. So if they continue to be popular, we'll continue to do them. But those guys out there who bought Saigas and Vepers are holding out, those services will be going live very soon here. Okay. And, we will get them knocked out as fast as we can.
So there you have it. So and guys, you got to keep in mind when you're talking custom work. So I'm going to be 51 in July. Jesus. I'm an old fart, and my entire life, if you had any custom work done, it's one of those types of things. Like back in the day, and this is going to date me, but I used to send guns HKs out to have them converted. And oh my gosh, I've forgotten his name. Terry. He used to do all the the belt fed HK. Belt fed, what were they? The 21s, AEs, the really, really rare 5.56s and stuff. Yeah. God, what was Terry's last name? But anyway, you would just send him a gun and you would forget you even owned it for 2 years. Yeah. And then just one day you would get a phone call, hey, I'm shipping your gun back. Is the address still good? I mean, when you sign up for custom work, don't send the gun in and then start making phone calls and sending emails, 2 weeks later, like, what's the status? What's the status? And the status is you're still in line, man. That's just the reality of having custom work done.
Well, and at that too, it's like, and I say this with a point of my slight frustration and pride is that, guys who are wondering, why turnaround can be slow in that kind of situation. It's like, it's across the board. Like myself, it's like, I have nice kits and stuff squirreled away. I've made one gun for myself that I've actually 4473 and taken home the decade I've been in business with Definitive Arms. And it's like, it's not like we're just out partying, living it up. It's like, we're in here 7 days a week doing this stuff. And if I ever want to work on something for myself, it's that I came back on a Friday and I'm here at midnight on a Friday doing it instead of out at the bar having a beer, doing whatever. That time is hard to find.
It takes a lot of time to build these things, guys. It's not something that's super simple to do. I mean, just to refinish a gun, you got to strip it down to every single part and refinish every single part. And it's time intensive. And then if you have custom requests, you want to, a barrel this long and you want, modified this or that, that's anything that's out of the ordinary takes a lot of time to manufacture.
Some of the one-to-one work and the stuff we do to like accuratize the guns, like your P Maganov, I probably had enough work into that. I could have built, 4 AKMs, and that's not even a whole build. Those are pre-built with Vepr. By the time I pulled everything, did the secret sauce, accurized it, did all the work, put it all back together, converted it.
So we'll show you guys that gun here in a second.
It's a lot of time.
So there's a couple super chats here. So James, thanks for your stance on the Second Amendment and your efforts. Thank you, man. I greatly appreciate it. If someone is interested specifically in learning to build AKs, is there a school that Chase would recommend? Which is an interesting conversation, because you just said when you went to gunsmithing school, they were teaching you about Mausers, and you're like, hey, what about Glocks? What about AR-15s? They're stuck in a curriculum that was a decade out of date. I mean, is there a place now that you can go to learn about AKs?
So unfortunately, I don't have any place that I would endorse or recommend. I know I've had a lot of people ask if we would ever teach classes. The reality is I did a lot of machining. I did prototype machining. I did a lot of one-off work in the past before I really got into guns. And I don't build AKs the traditional way a lot of other people do. I've developed my own method of doing it. I believe the results have spoken for themselves. We generally have, some of the most accurate AKs in the market. And I really see a lot of builds that I don't believe are done as well as they should. But these people watch videos on YouTube, they take, classes from individuals who are just repeating what they saw before them, and they kind of just find a hype of this is the way it's done, this is the way it's always been done, this is the way it has to be.
Right.
And I don't build them that way, so I can't recommend somebody go learn a way that I don't do it.
And for him to teach somebody how he does things basically is teaching a potential competitor in the marketplace, which I would advise against. And
we've debated it, and we've done some small private classes here or there for individuals. We're so busy. I just don't know if we'll get around to it.
Right. I know we've had conversations where maybe we will do this. We set up a build class for 10 people.
Yeah.
And I'd be one of the students because I've never built an AK. I'm mechanically declined, not inclined. So it's like, yeah, it would be a feat for me to build a gun. I don't think I'd even pull the trigger on my own gun.
Well, I did it with Rob. Rob it was one of his most popular videos, and Rob's a good friend of mine. And Rob, had to ask me numerous times till I found some time to set aside, and he came down and we built it. But it's like, it wasn't just hey, we do this every week and come down and tag along. It was finding the time to make it happen. And it's not completely off the table, but it just, we're so backed up. It's not something I consider at the moment.
And finding those types of schools, I mean, even like SDI, I mean, most of the stuff they teach would still be obsolete. I know they're trying to update their curriculum, but they're still teaching stuff that nobody wants to take a class on. I mean, it's archaic, but they're starting to move into 1911s and Glocks and AR-15s. I don't even think they had a curriculum for an AK yet. So, yeah, I also want to answer Philip's super chat. He said, guys, protect your First and Second Amendment. Building a gun is virtually impossible in Germany. Take my dirty euros, bro. I was just in Germany, my friend. I had a lengthy conversation with a Berlin police officer. It was interesting to hear about German gun laws, and I've been to many European countries, and the first thing I always ask about is, what are your gun laws? Take me to a gun store. So I've been to gun stores pretty much, all over the world. And one thing that I will say that, there's certain bits and pieces in certain countries, they have a better law than our law, but overall their laws are horrible when compared to our laws. Like right now, I'm carrying a pistol. Czechoslovakia, that's how old I am. Czech Republic is the only European country I've been to where they actually issue carry permits. I walked into a supermarket and they had the universal no Beretta slash. I look over at our host, I'm like, you guys can carry here? And they're like, yeah, we can get concealed carry permits. So there's certain countries in Europe that, that do that. There are certain countries in Europe where you can own machine guns, but the ammunition is illegal to own.
Right.
You have a fully functioning machine gun, but if you have 1 round of ammo, now you're in violation of law. Many European countries don't even know what an SBR is. They don't have stupid links on barrels on rifles, right? So certain countries have very good laws in very small regards, but overall here in the United States, I mean, in Indiana, if you want a concealed carry permit, you apply for it online. There's no training, there's no photograph, there's no fingerprints, and it's your lifetime permit shows up in the mail. And now we have 14 or 15 states that are constitutional carry. If you have a driver's license, you can carry a gun. You're not going to see that anywhere else in the world, except maybe Pakistan, I think, has better gun laws than the United States.
Well, I mean, the cost of freedom can be expensive in that regard. I mean, there's war-torn countries out there where you can trade a chicken dinner for a select fire AK.
Yeah.
Just the nature of how they're valued there. I wouldn't say it's a better place to live than the United States, but it just, it's just the nature of where they're at.
Let's see if trying to keep up with the super chats well.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Okay, so we got thanks both of you for everything you do. I have a Draco C I picked up years ago. I know it has the underfolder trunnion. Can't decide I want to SBR said folder or not. So in my opinion, if I had like an older AK that had that rear underfolder trunnion holes, and all you had to do is punch through it and have a competent gunsmith put that kit in there, I would probably SBR it. Some people would tell you not to SBR collectibles. I've done it. And I've done it to like Uzis. I've done it to all sorts of guns. So in that instance, I probably would, because you're not doing anything other than making it the way that it originally was.
Right.
You're not truly screwing it up. But once it's on the NFA registry, resale value is reduced because people don't want to pay a $200 tax and wait a year to buy a gun that has a folding stock. So, and then it becomes a question of who did the work. If you can't cite a quality, builder, if Joe Bob did his own stock conversion, that could potentially devalue the gun, right? I want to know the provenance of the gun if I'm going to buy a built gun. So it's just something to think about. Let's see.
We had a super chat a while ago.
Chase, I want to buy an AK. Oh, we missed one?
Yeah.
Let me get this one, then we'll go.
Topics,
Chase, I want to buy an AK from DA. Where? So right now, do we still have some listed at Copper? I know you guys will have a website up.
We just finished 2 production runs of I think, or we might have 3 different AKs that are about to get put back in stock. But I know there's at least 2 types.
Are they going to pop a Copper or are they going to pop a DA or both?
They'll be Copper. I would surmise probably before the end of next week.
Okay.
Tops.
So we should have some. I brought up another gun that Chase built for me. I showed you my East German. This is my Romy G that Chase built for me. So it has brand new, his what do you call it, the 7-layer park or
yeah, that one's got the original park rest finish down that we did in St. Pete, and
there's that stock.
It's just like a heavy armor plating. It's tough.
This finish is the same finish that Iraq veteran did a meltdown video, and the barrel drooped and was so hot that it was red hot in broad Georgia daylight. Yeah. I mean, you could see the barrel glowing red, and it was drooping. The wood had burned off. And at the end of the day, we sprayed some CLP on it, wiped the barrel, and this finish was still on the barrel. Any painted on finish would have been long gone, would have been to bare steel.
Yeah.
So I love this park that you do. Matter of fact, I have a Polish Beryl rifle that I had you repark for me.
Yeah.
Because the park on it was so bad and it was mismatched, and now it has this really, really good park on it. But this is a sample of Chase's work, and I think this has been in video before. So we'll have some of these coming up here maybe in a week or so. So keep an eye on the Copper Custom website, and you'll see some AKs if you're looking to pick up a DA gun. All right.
So to get back into more tech talks, there's
Okay.
a super chat that some other people have questions about. His washer side mount is out of spec, and what he can do to remedy that. He's trying RS mounts, Midwest mounts.
So that's a really common thing. You know, this is the thing. It's like my first AK I ever bought years and years ago was a washer.
Terry Dyer, thank you. Yep, HK Vollmer's Terry Dyer, thank you. That's my old man brains for it's failing me. I'm sorry, Chase.
Oh no, you're good. And you know, it's like my very first AK on it was a washer. It goes bang. Honestly, it's been reliable. It's been fine. Can't zero it. Mags are really tight to get in and out. I can barely get an optic on the side rail. You have to like pound it on with a mallet, and it's crooked. And like those are some of the things. We actually see guns coming out of Cluj, Romania, where they forgot to do the final dovetail cuts. It's like they were cast or forged components that they never final machined, and you can't get an optic on. And those are things. It's like as to where the gun does go bang. It's like if they didn't remember that detail, it's like what else are they forgetting to do? You know,
Right.
you roll the dice a little bit. I've had people with washers that are fine. I've had people where they're not fine right out of the box.
Yep.
And with something like that, you're most likely going to have to swap the side rail because, you know, if it wasn't final machine, setting it up and trying to final machine it on the gun can be a little bit of pain for somebody who doesn't have dedicated tools.
But if they didn't get those rivet holes right, your scope may not have enough adjustment in
Right.
it to get elevation straight.
Right.
So here's the reality of buying import AKs. I don't care what people tell you. The guns that come into the country, Romania is a perfect example. This used to be the case with the Russian AKs. Maybe not so much the Vepers, but I know with the Segas and stuff like that, we're getting B parts.
Yeah.
The military gets the grade A parts. The parts that don't pass muster get built into commercial guns. And even the best Russian AK manufacturer, you may think it's Veper, you may think it's Sega, you may think it's whomever. I'll guarantee you they put out a gun with sights that can't be zeroed, that have warped receivers, that just have any number of problems. But that's also true. Anybody that's served in the Russian military will tell you that once those rifles went into service, the bad ones were quickly identified, either pulled out of service or stripped of parts and used in other guns. Those guns would actually make it into Russian service. The quality in many former Soviet countries isn't necessarily there. I think probably the best, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, because you've seen a lot more of them than I have, but probably the best consistent quality would be probably the Bulgarian guns or maybe the Vepers. But I know you've seen Vepers with some really screwed up deals.
My opinion varies greatly from a lot of people, and it's just me being my experience working on thousands of these things is outside of the work done post Izmash to Sagas, the importers screwing up the feed ramps, things like that. The actual work from Izmash has generally been the most consistent in my experience. Okay. I've had the least amount of problems from factory issues on Izmash components. I know everybody loves Vepers. They're not that they're bad guns. I own plenty that are fine. We had 100 consecutive serial number 223 Vepers that all had out of spec bolts, and the guns wouldn't run. They had ejector issues, and
they used to do this. I remember people used to get really miffed because aftermarket parts suppliers, one run of Vepers would have slant cut receivers, the next run would be box, square cut, then slant cut, and the components would shift and tolerances would change between production runs. But that being said, my P. Maganov is a Veper. This is the gun that Chase built. I'll never change the way this is configured because this gun is capable of less than a minute. It'll hover right around a minute with Federal Gold Medal match, but I've shot sub MOA groups with this gun, and I have a standing offer. A lot of people out there saying like, oh, I finally built a sub-minute AK. It's like I've owned a sub-minute AK for quite some time. If you have an AK, and I haven't opened it, if you're watching and you have a sub-minute AK that uses factory ammo, and you want to come out and see if you can outshoot me with the P. Maganov, I have an open standing offer to come out and I'll put you on video and show me up. But we've never seen a gun that I have never seen a gun that can shoot better than this gun the way it's configured. So I won't take the scope off. I won't take this Midwest Industries mount off. I will not change anything about this gun simply because the way it's set up right now, and it has an OSS can on it, one of the old 30 cal OSS cans. And this sucker not only runs 100%, but it takes the, we jokingly call it the P-Maganov, but it takes standard 20 round P-Mags. So, yep, and has Magpul furniture all over it. But there you go. I mean, this is, you put a lot of time into this one.
I did. And, we really get into the level of work that we want to do when like accurizing a bolt actually done. The lugs have been lapped, every part of the feed geometry and tons of areas in the tronium that people normally would pay attention to has been altered, polished, adjusted by hand. Studying, live rounds loaded that are pulled out that haven't been fired yet, and looking where's any imperfections, where things getting touched. I mean, the projectile has any damage or change to it all, that's affecting accuracy, and it's a lot of work to try to make a consistently accurate gun.
And every gun's different with the AK. Whatever you come up with this gun, if you try to do the exact same thing and use the exact same cuts on the, stuff like that, you wouldn't get the exact same result. You're going to have to tweak it based upon how that particular gun's built, because every AK is like a fingerprint. It's slightly different than the gun before it.
And some of it, man, anyone who's been accurizing guns long enough will tell you, it's almost a little bit like black magic. You could take 100 guns, do the exact same work to all of them. 90 of them will shoot pretty good. 5 of them will still be 4 them away, and 5 of them will just be laser beams. And it's sometimes they got
lucky with that barrel. Yeah. Right. I've seen visibly out of round AK barrels.
Well, I check them, in a lathe with test indicator, and you'd be surprised. Hammer forged barrels are tough, but not in a level you'd almost be able to see by the eye. But a lot of them are actually like slightly ovaled. Yeah. And so I went through, and we happened to have a large batch at the time, and I handpicked one that was just perfectly round, end on end, and happened to be machined well, and everything looked real clean. And we started from there.
Yeah. So, all right.
So I guess to continue with the 308 Vepr accurized AKs, guys asking what mods or modifications you have to do to make a Vepr, specifically a DMR rifle.
Okay, so I'll give you a little commentary from what I know based on shooting a bunch of different types of guns. So Chase just spoke about this a moment ago. He was talking about chambering live rounds and looking at that live round. What you'll do if you take your standard off the rack AR-15 and chamber around and pull that round out and look at it, you're going to see a line on the bullet as the bullet hit the feed ramp. The bullet makes contact first, rides up, then it hits the brass case as it goes into the chamber, but it leaves a visible line on the bullet itself. Well, that is going to jack with that bullet's accuracy, because as that thing's spinning, that imperfection is going to catch wind and it's going to cause that bullet to do weird things. It's going to be that one round that goes off to one side. If the gun's consistently doing it to every bullet, then it's going to consistently, hopefully, do the exact same thing. You might be able to get some decent accuracy out of it, because almost every single AR-15 out there will mark a round in some way or the other. The same thing is true of an AK. When an AK feeds, put a live round in your AK at the range. Don't do this at home right now. Don't play with loaded guns, but just run a couple rounds through it and pick those rounds up and look at it. You're going to see on that case where that bullet gets deformed as it's being fed. So what Chase was talking about, one of the biggest things is controlling that feed and making sure that bullet case hits and not the bullet itself as it goes into the chamber, so you're not messing up that bullet's flight potential.
Well, even down to, these are tough guns, but they're not made to match grade specs to begin with. So sometimes the chambers in spec and passes, headspace, everything down to the grain structure and the direction of the tool marks inside of a chamber can have an effect on accuracy. If you're too polished, it doesn't actually create enough of gas seal. You can get gas blowback of inconsistencies and where the brass wants to shift, pressure curves, things like that. If it's also too high, you can have extraction issues, so forth and so on. So it's making sure the chamber is formable, making sure the transition into the rifling is smooth. There's not excessive tool marks or burrs or things that are just in there that are uneven from side to side, that are shaving one side of the projectile or not. There's so many things you could look at that have to be chased down to be absolutely
the crown
perfect.
Of the barrel.
Yep.
The barrel, when it's made, will be stressed, especially in a hammer forge. And so when that barrel heats up, it's going to expand and do wonky things. So as you fire more and more groups, and if you've shot long range at all, you know what I'm talking about. as the gun heats up, the shots start to string or go horizontal or go vertical, because as the barrel heats up, that stressing in the barrel is being relieved by the heat, and it's causing the barrel to move. And just a few thousandths of movement on the shooter's end equates to inches downrange potentially.
And I won't say exactly how, but that's actually part of the secret sauce is without altering the metallurgy. When you build these guns, especially from a fresh kit build, let alone like something like a Vepr that's already been built, as we actually suspend them, for a period of time at a temperature prior to refinish them, and kind of try to stress relieve the components. When you have these things heating up and they're under different pressures, the press fit of the block or the barrel of the trunnion, the heat and they shift and go one way or another. Making sure the press fit's not too high, not too low is important. And then we put them and we suspend them for a period of time at a certain temperature on wires, upright, and we get these things to heat up. Everything's going to expand some and then relax in one state. So the idea is it can kind of find home in advance before we apply finish the gun out, test fire, and go out and make sure it's all good. And you want these things to kind of find home and kind of seat in place. And you're only going to get that by heating up and shooting it, but the heat's not uniform across the entire gun where everything can kind of relax and find a home state.
Right. Even on bolt guns, that's a factor. Like, that's one thing I love about my P Maginov. I can put that first round in on a cold barrel, and that damn bullet's going to go right to the point of aim. I mean, that is so hard to do with anything that's self-loading. It's hard enough to do with a bolt gun, but it's actually easier to do with a bolt gun. When you start talking about gas guns, man, things change, especially with AKs. I mean, I know from talking to other people that build AKs, the gas piston as it goes into the gas cup on the front gas block. I mean, there's a certain tension that has to be there for the gun to shoot optimally, right? Some people think you need to completely take all stress off that, but you're not, because the minute that gas hits and that piston starts to go rearward, that barrel's naturally going to flex down because of it's above center of bore. So it's going to cause the barrel to want to go down, but it has to do so in a consistent way.
Right.
So there's so much you have to take into consideration when you're talking about a gas gun versus a bolt gun.
Oh yeah. Well, consistent in, harmonics and frequency, there's this magic realm where it's like you can have a gun that you put together and it has all these conditions. And if you're doing hand loads, you're bumping it up like a fraction of a grain of powder, you hit a point where it's like 3 MOA, bump it up 0.1 grains, half MOA, bump it up another 0.1 grains. Now it's back to 3 MOA.
Right.
You just find this magic area where the gun is just really consistent, or even locked to ammo. I've got guns, I've got cases of 5.45 or 7.62 where it's like, for whatever reason, I'm shooting like an inch group. And I just kind of, write on the box and put that lot away. And you can have the same, loading. It's like, oh, I just got more of this Gold Tiger and it's, 1.5 to away. But it's like, you'll find, cases that just like that particular gun. A
lot of folks, even old timers like me, do that. When you find a lot of federal gold medal match, you go out and you pick it up and it shoots good in your gun. You look at that lot number and you go out and you buy as much of that lot number as you can, because that is going to shoot to zero. And if I buy federal gold medal match tomorrow, it may not shoot as good as the last stuff I shot through this. And you'll also find with factory loaded ammunition that you're going to get that one round that does something stupid. So you have 4 shots into all touching, nice little clover leaf, then poink over here for no reason, like, God damn,
right.
But it's that one round because the shot broke clean. When I fire a rifle, I can say, that one broke a little left, and I'm good. Oh, that one broke a little right. When you have that one shot that's way off over here, that wasn't shooter error. That round did something stupid. It was some inconsistency at the factory that made it into the box. And the best ammo manufacturer will have those goof ups.
Well, you'll find too, is like, I'll see if I'm shooting like 5-shot groups, you'll find it's always round 4. It's always round 4. And like with feed geometry and like the way the follower is sitting in the magazine, you'll find that sometimes the rounds tilt a different way. And for whatever reason, when it's feeding, that projectile gets like lightly shaved and just, it's coming out the crown, and stabilization time is different and just veers one way over the other. And says, well, why is it always round 4? And you'll look, it's for whatever reason, it was a left or right side feed, and the follower is just quite tilted because it's not seated under more spring pressure, and you'll find consistencies.
And that's a really interesting point. If your gun is consistently doing something, and like Chase said, if it's on round 4, there's a mechanical problem. It's not, it's not the loose nut behind the butt plate. It's not the ammunition. You have a mechanical problem. Now you got to figure out what that mechanical problem is. And it takes a lot of time sometimes to run down those issues and then find a remedy for them. All right. So we had a couple.
Yeah. First one is he has a SAM 7 pistol with an SBA 3 and it's considering SBRing. If you have any advice and recommendation for a one-tang build receiver stock that isn't $300.
Well, let's talk about the SBR project. Yeah, I mean, I'm all for SBRing. Just keep in mind that once you do it, you're now going to have to ask the federal government for permission to take it out of state. If you move out of state, you have to tell the federal government that you're moving. Once you go onto the NFA, it brings a whole new level of restriction to your freedom of movement with that item, and that's the only thing you have to give consideration to, at least in my opinion. So one of the things that I have a benefit of, and Chase has the benefit of, we are FFL holders. So we can pretty much travel freely to all 50 states with anything that's on our books.
Right.
So if I have an SBR, technically Copper owns it, and I can go do a demo anywhere in the country I want to with it. I can even go into states that don't even allow machine guns or short-barreled rifles or suppressors because I'm a federally licensed dealer. Most of you don't have that luxury. So when that thing's in your name, there's a whole level of scrutiny there. And then if the ATF wants to do something, and I don't want to scare people away from NFA items, but the ATF can't just come knock on your door anytime they want. But technically, if you go away on vacation and leave your wife at home with that firearm and she doesn't own it, it's in your name and it's not in a trust with her name on it, technically she could get in trouble and so could you. I've never heard of that really being enforced. They're coming after you for something else. Don't be scared of that, but just know that when you go to the NFA, it does change the game. Yep. In terms with everything but suppressors. Suppressors aren't considered firearms, and you can travel freely across the United States as long as your final destination is not a state that bans them.
Right.
So I can travel across Illinois as an individual going to a free state like Missouri, and they can't harass me. Technically, they may harass you. There's instances where people have been harassed. Ultimately, you will probably prevail in court, but you should have the right of free passage through non-free states.
Yeah, that's really my hesitancy with even taking a personal SBR home. It's just that weird notion of trying to tie it down on paperwork that can track its existence and say, hey, this isn't easily traded, easily sold to a friend, whatever. And then ultimately, though, the firearm itself may retain its value, like you said. It's if you ever go to sell it to somebody, it's just that burden of having to process the paperwork, and you're adding $200 to whatever the cost is that you're not retaining.
Right. So, and what was the other question? We covered off on SBR.
Oh, he had the question about the tang as well.
Yeah.
The last time we had, it was one of Jason's guns, a single tang, milled receiver stock. He ended up buying the bottom plate, and I ended up riveting the bottom tang on so it would be natural and accepting of the double tang milled stock. Those stocks come and go, and they vary. You'll find Russian blanks, you'll find Bulgarian ones, and they can be dirt cheap, or like you're saying, they can be really, really expensive, and just not a consistent item that people are making enough of to have a cost-effective option for.
So we're seeing more U.S. companies trying to spool up. I mean, everybody knows Century's been trying for years to make a quality AK. The PSA, people are saying that their Gen 3 rifles are really good. I don't have one. The only experience I have with PSA firearms, I bought the AK V9 of theirs. Mine had a multitude of issues, which is documented in my video. I sent my gun in for repairs a couple of months ago, and I've been sending emails trying to get an update. And they say they're shipping the gun back to me, but I haven't received it yet. It's been a couple of months. I don't know if they can resolve all the problems that I found with that particular gun, but I hope they can, because I bought it. I own it now. But anyway, so.
I think stuff like that has to come down to, a reasonable consistency, and knowing that the products that they're testing in volume are going to be the same as the ones that leave the factory. And it really makes you wonder when there's some videos showing people roasting them on the ground, and other videos where people are killing them in the first 100 rounds. I got them.
All right. Any other questions that you've seen?
Oh yeah, there's lots of questions. I'm just trying to keep them all on topic.
Yeah.
There's a lot of questions that are based around AK preference and quality, different parts kits. I don't know, Chase, if you want to give them a rundown of different parts kits and country of origin, how the quality of gun you get in the end product, the way the machine and such.
Well, see, the AK has a couple things going on. You have guys who confuse rare ability and collectability with also being quality, and then you have guys who they just are really they're almost like fanboys, commit to a certain grade. It's there's this huge notion Bulgarian AKs are the best. I've repaired a whole lot of Bulgarian AKs. I don't think they're the be all end all by any means. At the same time, you kind of have this, you look at Russian guns, people oh, Russian parts. Only with AKs. Get into Nagants, people oh, Russian Nagants are trash. I want that Polish Nagant. I want that Finnish Nagant. Somehow, the quality of the craftsmanship's about the same. Russian parts aren't bad by any means. They're tough. They're rare. They hold their value. they're crude. Strictly from a utility standpoint, of value of using this thing as a tool. I found that late 60s to late 70s Polish parts kits generally seem to be really solid. I have my Select Fire 1967 Polish, and dude, that gun's got over 30K through it. And if you take it apart and put the bolt down, I mean, it doesn't look like it's ever even been fired. Everything about it is just spot on. And I can't say the same for some of the other kits that I put together. I've got a Bulgarian 74 Select Fire. I'm on the 4th barrel on the gun, and though the rest of it's held up well, I've had to nip and tune little areas and file burrs off and stuff to keep the thing running. And I have repaired a lot of Bulgarian guns. All the guns can be hit or miss. I've also had, machine guns that are Bulgarian guns that have held up just fine. It's to say that any one country, type, or base is consistently going to be great. A Remington 700 made in the 70s is a completely different animal than what comes off their line today. It's not to say that just because it's from one country, it's superbly adequate.
See, I've had the same experience. Like, I have a Wasser 1063 that is a stupidly accurate gun with Tula ammunition. And Tula is like universally known to be pretty much bad.
Right.
And it's not Golden Bear or Golden Tiger or Silver Bear or any of the quality premium AK ammo. It likes Tula, and the darn thing shoots lights out. And that's just, you luck into it. You can find other. So people always tell me, like, man, do you recommend picking up a Wasser? Yeah, but I'll never buy a Wasser unless I can put hands on it and look at it, because I look down the barrel and look for straightness, because I want to be able to zero the thing. I'll take a look at the accessory rail, and I'll look at the rivets, because some of them you can just look at them and visually they scream don't buy.
Right.
And then others look perfectly fine. And I've seen that with Russian AKs. I've had my fair share of Russians that had canted sights. I've seen Bulgarians with really bad finishes in canted sights. I've seen when you're talking about Romanians, I mean, the current crop of Serbian AKs that people call Yugos, I mean, I've seen some real serious problems with those. So you really, there's no one country of origin that you can say, oh yeah, every single gun they've ever built, that's the one to buy.
And it can be two factors. Part of it's going to be, original quality components, and then the craftsmanship behind it. Like, I've got a Wasser 10 in inventory right now that I bought off somebody. The headspace was bad on it. They just opted to sell it. The gun wasn't damaged, but it was, was failing field gauge. So we rebuilt the front end. Blocks are crooked and it was kind of stiff here or there. So we redid the whole front end, rehead spaced it, lined everything, and it was older. The rifling was in great shape as original hammer forged barrel, and we polished and tuned everything up on it, slicked up the trigger, slicked up the action, refinished it, and it feels like one of our guns now, And I don't think the components are bad. I just don't think it was assembled right from the factory. And prior, getting mags in was kind of a bind. They were, the catch would stick. So now it runs nice and buttery, and with a couple hours of love and a refinish, it's a perfectly fine gun. And like I say, it's a very one-to-one, and year to year. I mean, some of these countries were war-torn, and it's like you look at 67 Polish parts are great, and 68 that are having issues with their government, and the factory was kind of hit or miss, or people didn't really give a crap about their job, and some of the components in 68 were funky. You get back to the later part of 69, the kits are fine again. It's almost a month to month. It's like, was the city under siege during that month? Stuff might got rushed and was kind of funky. You know what I mean?
That happens with Colts. I remember in the 80s, Colt had a strike, and all their skilled labor went out. So management tried to bring in other people to continue production, and their 1911s and their ARs and stuff had serious problems during that short period of time in the 80s when they had the strike. So there's all sorts of stuff that can be factored into whether or not, you can't even say Smith & Wesson are always flawless, man. I've seen so many people on the Smith & Wesson forums now saying that barrels are, threaded cockeyed into the frames and all sorts of problems. But then you have other years where everything's flawless. You don't have any problems. Every single gun manufacturer can have issues. And I mean, gosh, man, Remington was putting out the Model 700, even in its prime when they were beautiful rifles, that still got recalled because the triggers were bad for 50 years.
Right.
So you just don't know. And, buying a gun is like buying anything that's mass produced. I mean, you can run into problems.
Well, any working machine is always going to be a roll of the dice. This is where I say it's like, even us, we put thousands of guns on the market, and we've had guns come back, and it might not be something we did. We've had guns come back where we inspect the parts, everything's good. The guy got 500 rounds and a firing pin broke in half. It was just, it wasn't heat treated right. And we replaced the firing pin, and without individually testing every part, which would be cost prohibitive, it's like there's no way of knowing. But these things generally show their heads really, really fast. So it's like you get a gun, and it's not to say that 3,000 or 5,000 rounds is the magical number. but it's like a hard gun that I might consider using, whatever scenario you envision. I'll build usually twins. So I'll go out and I'll run them both, get them both broken in. Then if I want to be able to run that gun, I'll train with it and just beat it into the ground. And you could be at 20,000 rounds. The next round that a spring is going to go bad, the extractor claw is going to break. But the one that I've got 4,000 rounds through, that I've now detail stripped, inspected, everything looks good, doesn't have abnormal wear, I'll clean it, oil it, and just put it away, knowing that gun's good. You get to 4,000 or 5,000 rounds, you don't see any signs of wear coming where it doesn't look like it's going to die in another 1,000 or 2,000 rounds. It's probably fine. Metallurgy is such that if you're just 10% this way, it'll die in 5% of the life of what it could be. 10% this way, it's either going to crack or it's too soft, or there's so many areas where you've got to be right on the money. And a difference of 5 or 10% is a difference of being a 2,000 round gun, or these range rentals people have their 80,000 round guns before the receiver just cracks in half. It's just been cycled.
Well, it's just like the two Vishkas that I ran into down at Jaeger's place when we did that video. We're trying to do a 5,000 round test. Those guns fell apart in less than 2,000 rounds. And here I'm holding a parts kit gun, a Polish parts kit gun that's a machine gun that I've fired I don't know how many rounds in Florida. I did a video with this thing. You've shot it up to the tune of 30,000 plus. And this thing still passes a field gauge, not even a field gauge. It still passes, a go gauge. So, that to say that a gun has a service life really varies. Some people will say, and even manufacturers will say, like on the Beretta 92, that block, replace the locking block every 15,000 rounds or something. I'm making the number up. Same thing with AKs. Certain parts are high wear parts, other parts aren't. So some will last longer than others. But unfortunately, for US AKs, I've yet to see one that can do what this old Polish girl's done.
And that's just at the same time, and this isn't the norm. We put a lot of Polish DA cam kits together, and we had one come back. And the gun was built totally fine. I think it was a 72, early 70s kit, and the trunnion was just like 2 points shy of where it should have been on the Rockwell scale. And he had like 3,000 rounds through it, but it just gradually mushroomed back, and eventually it was blowing head space and ate through a field gauge, and it wasn't anything we did, wasn't anything he did. And
just bad metal.
No, we rebuilt the gun for him and swapped out the matching parts and stuff like that. But it's like I said, you could build 1,000 of these, and most of them will be good. But it's like, no, you do something 1,000 times, you're going to have a problem somewhere, and that's why you have to go test the stuff and make sure it's good to go. Even
in the sourcing of materials, right? If the sourcing of the material for the stamping of the receiver, you can get impurities that get into the metal that it won't even take a proper finish.
Right.
So the military would park them and paint over them. I mean, you can paint anything.
Oh yeah.
So even if there's impurities in the steel, you wouldn't even know that. And if that impurity happens around a rivet hole or something like that, you can very well have a stress fracture or a fracture occur right there. But that's just because it was that production run. They got bad sourced materials, and you just got unlucky.
Yeah, you
can't get around it.
Plethora of data and probably a whole video that can be done on receivers and bad metallurgy, and that's a whole other topic we'd have to get into.
Yeah.
But no, and that's true, and it's across the board with anything. I've had cheaper ARs, F1000s rounds are fine. I've bought high-end name brand ARs that metallurgy. Yep. The lock just lugs cracked right off. The first 100 round shooting. It's like, so it's not to say any one brand, any one country, any one builder, any one type is going to be flawless. You roll the dice, but you always try to stack it in your favor. And generally speaking, of all the guns you built, I can think of, less than I count on both hands that have come back with a serious issue, and usually no individuals at fault. And it's kind of hard to go back in time, 1967, and go find the guy who didn't do his job. Parts out of spec.
Get out of here.
So it's just, you want to educate yourself as best you can and try to get an eye on what to look for. And, if this isn't just a range toy for you and it's your lifeline, it's something you can envision defending your family with. I mean, every time you go to the range and shoot it, you go to a training class, come home, break it down, give it a look over, inspect it, log things down, keep track of things are going to wear, things are going to mushroom a little, things are going to move a little, and then might get to a point to stop. If it's progressive and just keeps going, and exponentially getting worse, you might want to have it checked out, might want to have it tested, might want to opt to replace it.
This is a little off topic, but Chase touched on something. So if you carry a firearm, rifle or handgun as a defensive tool, word of the wise, after you go to the range and use it, take it home, tear it down, function check it, clean and function check it. I've had a fluke happen where I didn't clean the rifle that I keep with me as a defensive arm. It goes with me everywhere in the vehicle. And we were out at the range one weekend. We shot, played with the gun. I just threw it back in its holder, came home next weekend. Jason and I go out, we're playing around, and I take it worked fine. It worked fine when I put it, back in its rack. Nothing changed. Get to the range, take it out, first round, click, no bang. Like, son of a bitch, jacked around and click, no bang. I'm like, seriously, I broke a firing pin in 35, 40 years of shooting AR-15s. I've never broke a firing pin. I'm like, really? Did that just happen? I stripped the gun down, look at it, and you know what was screwed up? I had a primer blowout. The anvil inside the primer got into the firing pin hole, and that was keeping the gun from going bang.
That's exactly a similar story. A buddy of mine who carried a Glock 17 and, carries it, use it when you're out, training, shooting. And it had to have been like one of the last rounds, the last round he fired. You're not looking at every case that's getting ejected out into the woods and the dirt. Right. And, and he'd oiled it, was carrying it, and we meet up, a month or two later, and we're out shooting. He goes to fire the first round, and the gun won't fire, and we can't figure out what's going on. So we take it apart. Well, a piece of primer had blown out, was inside of the firing pin canal, and it would go forward, and the firing pin would protrude, but it was blocking it, and it wasn't enough to detonate primers. And like, the gun was fine, Glock was fine. And it's like, how would you have known unless you went to fire the next round? It just happened to be one of the last rounds, the last round he had fired.
It was the last round I fired.
In there.
I mean, that's Murphy jacking with you right there, because it was the last round. Because otherwise, I would have stopped and looked at the gun before I put it away.
Right.
If it didn't fire. And so that like burned into my brain bucket. Like, all right, so religiously check your defensive arm, because you never know what Murphy's up to.
Oh yeah.
So, something's going to screw up. So always function check that firearm. I don't care how quality you think it is.
Like, after shooting my carry Glock, I do the same thing. I give a light cleaning, blow it out there, whatever, and I give it there's a general series of armor's checks, and I drop a nylon rod in it and pull it and make sure the firing pin's still.
For me, it's an eraser on a pencil.
Right.
Yeah.
And especially after what happened to my buddy, it's like I always check, make sure do I have some kind of piece just stuck in there, a little bit of carbon, whatever, and I make sure the gun's as reasonably functioning as possible without firing another round out of it.
Because the way my gun failed, there is no immediate action. That gun was out of the fight until I field stripped it and poked that piece of anvil out of my
we had to go in with a dental pick, and the thing had been kind of mashed in, and there was no way without tools and disassembling it you wouldn't have got it run.
That freaks you out when that happens. All right, so thank you, 2A, a $5 2A super chat. Do we have any other questions? How long have we been running here, guys? Oh, we're an hour and 6 minutes. See, I told you, man, it just blows by. Guys, thanks for watching. Let's see. Did you say you had some?
Yeah, I think we'll be diving into more conversation, trying to figure out something here. Wrap her up. Optics for AKs, what's the best?
What's the best? It's like, yeah.
What's a good option?
Yeah, what's the best car on the road?
So outside of like something like the P-Magnov, we're developing like a DMR based, AK, where you might want, like a 1-6 or something like that. Honestly, for me personally, if I'm running them in like a carbine, on your feet fighting rifle roll, like something like this, at most, outside of, maybe not this particular gun because it's so classic and beautiful looking, it's like I would opt to run, micro dot, red dot, weapon light, sling, and that'd be it. Like, as far as optics go, like, I'm only looking to get, a 0 magnification red dot on this thing. And something like the P-Magnov, for me, I can't see going past a 1-8. And
I don't have one of my rifles here that I use, but yeah, same thing. I mean, I don't like magnification. I can easily hit a man-sized target with a red dot sight out to 300 yards. If you got your 0 right, you can hit comm or center of mass with a dead hold if you properly zero your rifle. So I don't use magnification because I don't want the weight. I don't want a 1-6. I'm not going to take time to dial in magnification. And you always have to remember, in a self-defense situation, you're going to have a very hard time explaining to a jury of your peers how a man at 300 yards was a threat to you.
Right. And at that, it's like, that aside, if you're really going to go about wanting to, stretch the legs on the AK, I find, Dimitri at Primary Arms has done an excellent job of making calibrated reticles, the ACSS reticle system, for calibers that are AK friendly. So they've got 545, 7.62, 5.56, 308. And, the few of my AKs that do have magnified optics on them, or, they go down to 1 for sure, but I've got 1-6s, 1-8s. And, they're set up with a reticle that has, built-in BDC for the caliber I'm using. Yeah. And that's about as far as I would go. Outside of that, I'm just not trying to make a mile-long AK. If I'm trying to hit a guy past 600, 700, 800 yards, I mean, the reality is I'm going to want a different gun. The 6.5 Brendak that I have, we had it out and we were hit 8x magnification. We were shooting 800 yards. We hit the plate almost every single time. But I mean, that's a stretch. If like you intend to be shooting at 800, 1,000 yards, not that you couldn't do it with the P-Maginov. It's like,
Yeah.
you know, it's not really what the gun is truly meant to do. And again, if I don't have optic that can go down to 1x and I can't still use it as an up close fighting rifle, it's not what I'm into when it comes to AKs.
Yeah, I would agree. So flashlight's a must, and for me, a red dot sight, and then iron sight should be on any type of defensive firearm because optics have a tendency to fail.
With a good combat zero and the ability to access them quickly.
Right. So for my rifles, I always set them up where my iron sights will co-witness. I like my red dot sight to set lower, so I like an absolute co-witness. A lot of guys like a lower third. They'd set the mount up a little bit higher. If you're running lasers and stuff like that, you know, now we're into grand thumb territory. I mean, I'm just a guy that may need a rifle to dispatch a, you know, coyote or something, right? Chances of me getting into a gunfight with my rifle are pretty nil. So I keep it pretty realistic. I don't get into a bunch of fancy stuff. I'm not active duty military, so I don't need, you know, PEC 14s and, you know, nods and all that other crazy stuff. So red dot sight, flashlight, and a good sling. And I have a rifle set up the way I like it.
And even in military use, you know, statistically, most effective hits still happen inside of 100 yards.
Yeah.
You know, so it's not the same. Magnified optics don't have their place, but you know, like I say, starting with a 1 to 4, 1 to 6, 1 to 8 is about as far as I stretch it.
Yeah. A lot of people like those types. Oh, let's see. Oh, it's a Second Amendment post. Thank you for the super chat. My eyes are so bad. Anyway, the $2 super chat for keep up the good work on the Second Amendment. A smiley face. Heart. I mean, thanks. Oh, guys. See, I do wear, I don't know where they're at. You never see me with them, but I wear glasses, reading glasses, because my eyes have gotten so bad. I tell you what, that messes with me. You know, with iron sights, losing your near sight really sucks.
Yeah.
Because as you get old and you start to lose, you know, I used to be able to read things right here where now it's a complete blur, and now it's out here where I can see clearly. And every year that distance gets further and further and further to the point where, you know, on a rifle, on a handgun, focusing on the front sight becomes an issue because, you know, it's so close now. It's right at that threshold where that front sight's just starting to get blurry with my old eyes, and
that's
sucks.
where the difference in like AK iron sights comes in. Where guys like, oh, you know, it's a crappier sight compared, you know, like rifle length sights on an AR, and like, you know, when you're sitting at a bench in a controlled environment that's well backlit, yes, have that nice, you know, peep sight. You can sit there and hold a nice group. Put yourself in semi-low light conditions on your feet where you're almost point and shooting inside of 25 yards, 50 yards, and maybe even almost out to 100. That big loop on the front of the AK, I can find it pretty quick.
I'm going to show you something. I'm stepping over here. There's a reason why these sights are still in use today.
Yep.
All right, so you're looking at AK sights, right? And people want to complain about that sight being so far forward. There's a reason for that. And that reason goes back, here's a World War I era Mauser, okay? So this is World War I era, and look at that rear sight. Surprisingly similar to a modern day AK. You go back to iron sights, I mean, Lee Metfords and other things, aside from some of the fancy sights they put on them, iron sights, for the most part, for military rifles, for the longest times, universally, were put forward and weren't aperture.
Right.
It took the Marine Corps and the United States Army, you know, they went from the 1903 to 1903, which had the peep sight. The 1903 had these sights. So the switch to aperture sights is something that's a relatively recent change. But if you take a look at the way AK sights work, I like them because with them being far forward and broad, I shoot with both eyes open. And why is that an advantage when I'm shooting with both eyes open and still being able to use the sights? The advantage is you have your peripheral vision. You still know what's going on around you. When you do this and you focus the little peephole, you have no idea what's going on left and right of you.
Well, what's interesting too is like in a different role, we were out running, we were out doing a course one time, and to proof point, we were shooting specifically open sights. And it's like while shooting in the prone from a fixed position at the same cadence speed with a, like an M16A2 or, you know, full size rifle like they are, my groups were tighter.
Oh yeah.
However, now we ran a drill on our feet. We were running around the same course of action, and it was, you know, paper target set up, and we'd hammer out rounds and run the next one, hammer out rounds. I was faster and more accurate using the AK while point shooting off my feet. Laying in the prone, I was more accurate with the AR.
But that's why the A2 has a combat sight.
Mm-hmm.
The A2 has that really broad aperture, which is meant to be used with both eyes open, and it's close quarters combat sight. So they figured that out with the M16A2. That wasn't present on the M16A1 or M16, which is trying to offset that difference, because the forward set rear sight is in my mind, a superior iron sight for military application. For precision shooting, the aperture beats the forward rear sight hands down. There's no arguing that point. The point being, this is a better combat fighting sight than an aperture sight.
Yeah, I mean,
in my opinion.
And that kind of, starts to fall into like you hitting that shorter range, almost like submachine gun sights, faster to point and shoot with.
Are we going to talk about this?
Sure.
All right. So, unless you guys, here's $2, second amendment. All right. Thank you, man. Greatly appreciate. I think we
get a 6.5 Grendel, AK, components, mags, where we get them.
We have some, don't we?
We do have some 6.5 Grendels that they're in the queue, and at least ours in particular are going to have our magwell conversion on them. And I believe the Israelis make the Elander magazines, the 6.5 Grendel AR mags. In all our testing, they've been really reliable. We've got a guy in Michigan who's got one who shoots it all the time and sends us photos, videos. He used Elander mags. They've been reliable, and really for me, I'm not really sure of like rock and lock mags that are 100% with 6.5 Grendel yet, outside of like factory Vepr mags and stuff like that,
which are limited capacity,
right? And so for us, the 6.5, the Grendac conversions have been surprisingly, very accurate and consistent. And but for me, outside of running them with the Elander mags, I just can't say that there's something that's reliable and weapon grade out there.
I mean, I love the. Go ahead.
No, super chat. Palomo PKO 1VS and 7.
Oh, I have one on there. Yeah. I love it. So the Russian red dot sights, like I have a Cobra and a few other Russian sights. I love them for their authenticity, for their quality. Get an aim point, get a primary arms. The Russian red dot sights, the electronics are nowhere nearly advanced as the Swiss sights and the aim points, or even Chinese produced red dot sights, like the guys at PA manufacture them. HoloSun makes, I think, most of their red dot sights, and HoloSun sights are getting rave reviews now. I think they've kind of hit that threshold where HoloSun used to be known for making junky red dot sights. Now people are really starting to like them, like their 503s or something like that, are getting rave reviews. But yeah, I love them for their authenticity, but I like the look on the AK because Russian optic, Russian gun. Beyond that, no, they're not very good guns. The Cobra cracks me up because it has that little detent ball in it. When you're unscrewing the adjustment cap, you can go too far and it'll all fall apart. A little spring and a ball will go flying out. Like crap, now you can't make adjustments to your sight. It's like the worst designed red dot sight. I don't think it's a military sight either. I think that was.
Yeah, to be honest, I'm not sure.
But yeah, so Chase, why don't you tell everybody what this is?
This was made a brief appearance back in January. This is one of the original prototype, DESA action, Remington 700 DESA bolt action guns, and DESA stands for definitive arm short action. So this will use 700 pattern actions. And, this is our micro chassis system. This one has a 9-inch barrel, is chambered in 300 blackout. Obviously, it's got a small suppressor on the front, on the back, takes down real fast, and without the suppressor on it, it would fold up and be very compact. And this is one of the areas that we're going to be driving the company towards. I used to do precision guns and, interest kind of shooting guns in the past before I got into AKs. I did match grade bolt action work.
You did some 1911s too, didn't you?
I worked on 1911s. I worked on a lot of guns. I mean, we do a lot of work that's outside of definitive arms. We do contract research and development. I restored, museum grade machine guns, things like that. And, we don't show a lot of it off because it's not what definitive is particularly known for. When guys wonder where we're at, where we've been, what are we doing. We do a lot of work outside of, this particular name. But explicitly under definitive arms, one of the areas that we're getting into, I'd like to get back into is precision guns, precision shooting. And for me, this is, a concept that a lot of companies are starting to do. And I try to just make it simple and modular and without making it too proprietary. It uses a lot of common parts. I mean, it's going to take any AR-15 stock, AR-15 grip. Very simple mechanism, not a whole lot to go wrong. It's very robust.
So they can see it.
And it's lightweight. The whole chassis system weighs less than a pound.
Yeah, so this is lightweight. And if you check it out, look how the bolt comes back into the buffer tube. And you have this little pin that you can pull the pin out, and then it folds around, and then it'll lock into place. It won't fall. You can push the pin down if you want to. That will permanently lock it. Now it really won't fall. but it has a detent that holds it, and you just pull this pin up, and then you can extend it.
That's a standard AR-15 rear takedown pin, and a lot of guys ask why we use that. I'm really into robust survival prepper grade guns.
Yeah.
And tiny folding auto catch mechanisms on a spring can go bad, and then you can't use the gun. That pin's not really going to break in the field. It's very simple. In the rare event somehow it did, you could pound a wood stick in there and keep the thing going. I really like having components that don't have small pieces that require them to operate. That way, it gets wet, it gets the elements in it. You're not worried about tiny detents and things corroding, seizing the gun up and not making it work. And,
so yeah, you have readily
robust.
available parts. The pin is a standard AR-15 takedown pin if you need to replace it. The standard AR-15 buffer tube in stock back here. This is a BCM rail, and that's just an off-the-shelf part. And then they've made this section here that sets up so it's at the same height as your standard BCM rail. Which, if you want to go out here, you can. I don't recommend doing that. You probably want to stick to back here.
Yeah,
but
the same height, one rail all the way from front to back. We've got longer versions, like we've got a 60-inch 308, and we've got some 6.5 Creedmoors and stuff. And they've got longer BCM rails on that extend all the way out to the front.
But you can use standard AR-15 braces on this. So this one's an SBR, but you can put a standard, SB tactical brace on this, or any your favorite, CAC or whatever it is that you like to use. Yeah, so this is really, really cool because I love the fact that it so easily folds into such a nice, small little package. And the one that I want will be either 6.5 Grindle or 6.5 Creedmoor. I'm a big 6.5 convert, man. I'm done with 30 cal. I love 300 blackout. This one is a 300 blackout. But yeah, now you'll also notice that it's using standard floor plate stuff. Basically, this is a trued Remington action.
Yeah.
Right. So you've taken it down. You've actually trued everything, and it's just a silky smooth action on the gun. That's just actually, and this is painted by Copper, so you can get them in pretty much any color or camouflage pattern you would like. So.
Yeah, and then we'll have off-the-shelf offerings for people in regards to whole guns. Guys who want to upgrade their current gun, we'll have a drop-in chassis system that's about to hit, and that way guys can order it, just hand tools, be able to bolt it up themselves. Or, if they want to get it, with this rail system on it, it requires a little bit of, custom work on the front, but we'll have off-the-shelf options that people can buy to acquire guns and pretty much any caliber that the short action can set up. And that's part of we have other bottoms that you can use detachable magazines. I know it's popular.
That's where I was going with that.
You're limited in caliber in that regard as to where, there's springs and followers for standard 700 bottom metals, or you can chamber them. And those guys out there who they want something modern that they can easily accessorize and tune for specific hunts or whatever, but they're really gung-ho about some really exotic caliber they reload for. Well, this kind of bridges the gap. You can set it up for that exotic caliber that goes in short action, but it's modernized with a upgraded ergonomics and and also recoil management. You now have the drive line of the recoil in line with the stock, as opposed to these chassis that are really tall top to bottom.
So you see where the barrel is pretty much in line with my shoulder, so it gives you the same advantage. Notice how low the bolt sits, so you can, quickly operate the bolt and go right back to the shooting position. So everything sits really, really low,
and
as compared to your normal 700 chassis system.
The positioning of grip and the stock is very similar to an M4. So your height above bore and your height from the cheek bolt is the same as an AR. So at this point in time, I think a lot of shooters probably have more time behind AR-15s than most any other gun. And guys who are comfortable shooting that platform, they pick this up. It's going to feel very, very similar.
Yeah, it does. It feels very, very similar. And that you can't argue that's a nice small package. And this is a primary arms optic on here with the ACSS reticle in it. And this one's ballistically matched, I think, for the 300 blackout. So you can get them. Primary arms is ballistically matching reticles for all sorts of calibers and stuff now, which is really, really cool. They also have a signature line of optics, which I know seems kind of weird because their primary arms is kind of known for budget optics, but they have some Japanese-made signature line series guns, or optics, I'm sorry, that are platinum, that are just absolutely amazing. I have a couple of them now, and really they're every bit as good as any top of the line manufacturer in that price range.
Yeah, the platinum 1 to 8 that I've got on my Desa 308 is side by side with the Night Force I have. Is the color and the glass is the same. They are really good scopes, and we've been producing pretty good groups out of that gun.
Yeah, very cool. All right, any other questions or comments before we've been at this now for almost an hour and a half. Pretty good. All right, guys. I think we covered off on all the super chats. For all of you that super chatted, thank you very much. Everybody that tuned in. Oh, here's the receiver. just by itself.
Just the strip chassis. Yep.
Super lightweight, all aluminum.
Yep. These are fully built machined, and like I say, we'll have guys will be able to buy these for their own guns, and we'll have production guns with them. So.
All right, guys. And if you have any questions, just contact the Copper Custom, or you can contact Chase. What's that way they can contact you, man?
Sales@definitivearms.com, and we are very, very close to the new site launching, and we'll have an 800 number where people can get a hold of our staff.
Okay.
So
Cool. All right, guys. Thank you for watching. Thanks for 11 years of support. Thanks for all the super chats, and we'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks for tuning in, everybody.